year 1969 was a time when America had several unforgettable events. Among them, the most significant event is the landing of man on the moon with Apollo 11. The Apollo 10 project began on May 18, 1969. NASA started this as a rehearsal for Apollo 11. As a result of the success of that rehearsal, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first two people to set foot on the moon on July 20, 1969. With this success, everyone expected that NASA would continue to conduct moon missions. But soon they stopped conducting moon missions. There were many reasons for that. When you look closely at this first moon mission, you can get an idea of why it happened. A few minor mistakes could have ended the Apollo 11 mission to the moon, and it could have ended in disaster. In fact, some say that man never set foot on the moon. We'll talk about that later. In this video, we're going to talk about 8 things that we haven't heard much about that led to the early end of the moon mission. 1. The huge cost of the Apollo 11 project. The Apollo 11 project was successful because of the dedication and unwavering hope of thousands of people. Even today, this mission to the moon is considered the greatest engineering feat of mankind. Since the mid-20th century, scientists have been trying to create a machine that could surpass the Earth's atmosphere, reach the moon, and return. It was also very important that the pilots on that mission were safe throughout the journey. These projects, which started from scratch, gradually became successful and took a long time to reach the level of planning for the Apollo 11 project. The Apollo 11 project alone took 8 years and $2.4 billion. That amount has grown to a little over $23 billion today. Spending that kind of money again is not an easy task for anyone. 2. No one offered to insure the astronauts going to the moon. Most of us have some kind of insurance. We do this to protect ourselves from unfortunate events that happen in life. Usually, it is not difficult to get life insurance. But for Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins, it was not like that. Which company would offer life insurance to someone who is sent on a spaceship that can explode at any time? No company came forward to take on these challenges. Although NASA was ready to pay a large sum of money to provide life insurance for these 3, none of the insurance companies thought that they would return to Earth safely. But Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins did not just sit there thinking that this was the case. They found a creative solution to this. They knew that there was a great demand for their signatures. At that time, selling signatures online or at auctions was not a common practice. But because of this moon trip, all 3 realized that their signatures were very valuable. A month before the Apollo 11 project began, these 3 astronauts were quarantined. All they did during this time was sign memorabilia that could be sold. This allowed them to build their own life insurance. They told their families to sell the signed memorabilia if anything happened to them during the mission. In the end, they returned home with the success of the Apollo 11 project. They also made a good income by selling these memorabilia. Today, these signatures are worth about $30,000. Somehow, this insurance problem must have made NASA think twice about their trips to the moon. 3. The laborious training of astronauts. It was very difficult to develop the technical aspects needed for the mission, but that was not the only difficulty. Training the astronauts participating in the mission was also a difficult task. Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins traveled not only across America, but also around the world to acclimatize themselves to the lunar mission. They trained in several locations in Arizona, Texas, and Nevada. At these locations, they acclimatized themselves to walking in lunar-like environments and taking soil samples. They did a lot of training, including digging trenches, sending tubes into the ground, and taking soil samples. However, the most challenging part was getting used to living in low gravity. They had to acclimatize themselves to zero gravity. They had to walk around in zero gravity, plant flags, and walk on walls in low gravity. This training was not easy for many people to do over and over again. 4. The Saturn V rocket that was about to explode. The Saturn V rocket was the rocket that NASA used to launch Apollo 11. NASA was concerned that the rocket's power would cause damage to bystanders during an emergency liftoff. This was due to an incident in 1968. In 1968, the rocket exploded during the launch of Apollo 6, causing a major disaster. In 1965, two scientists had calculated that the fireball would have spread 1,400 feet. They also estimated that the temperature would have been 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. Many people had come to watch Apollo 11 launch. Knowing this, NASA had taken steps to prevent any possible accidents. The VIP audience was positioned at least 3.5 meters away. Fortunately, nothing happened to the Saturn V rocket. This did not cause an emergency. Even today, the Saturn V rocket is the largest and most powerful rocket in the world that has completed its mission without any danger or loss of life. However, we think that everyone understands that it is not practical for NASA to constantly take this risk. 05. Armstrong's flight control skills were better than expected. After the Apollo 11 mission took off, the success of the mission depended largely on Neil Armstrong's skills. Before joining the lunar mission, Armstrong worked as a naval engineer, flight officer, and aircraft tester. Armstrong had shown special skills as a pilot. Buzz Aldrin once said that Neil Armstrong was the best pilot he had ever seen. However, did you know that Armstrong's very skills got him and his friends into trouble? NASA planned to land the Eagle on the moon's calm sea at the exact spot they had planned. But when they were about to land, they saw that there was a large crater there. Armstrong took control of the plane and tried to land it in a suitable place. He did it so well that the spacecraft landed better than NASA had expected. NASA had predicted that a collision with the moon would break off part of the spacecraft's base. That's why the base was designed to break off as soon as the spacecraft hit the surface of the moon. But Armstrong's skill was so great that that part didn't break. That's why Armstrong and Aldrin had to jump from a height to land on the moon. This smooth landing of the Eagle wasn't that much of a problem. But if the landing had gone wrong, it would have been a big problem because the reserve fuel would have been used up more than necessary. But Armstrong had calculated everything correctly and made sure that didn't happen. However, NASA must have hesitated to continue taking such a risk. 06. Some people think that this is the main reason why NASA stopped the moon trip. Years after the Apollo 11 mission, those interested in flying saucers and those who are looking for hidden secrets began to tell a strange story. According to them, NASA brought back not only rocks and soil from the moon, they also brought back part of an alien body. These people say that NASA is hiding that story to this day. Even after more than 50 years since the moon mission, we have not found life on the moon. But those who said it before think that the high-ranking officials of the moon mission know something more than what has been revealed to the world. Do you think that there is really life on the moon after watching this video? Or is it just another hoax? Tell us what you think. 7. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin went to the moon. Not many people know that Neil and Buzz would be trapped in space for a short while during the Apollo 11 mission. On July 20th, 1969, after the historic moon landing, Neil and Buzz set off to return to the spacecraft. At that time, they noticed one thing. It was a piece of the switch that powered the spacecraft's circuit. It had broken and fallen. This had happened due to a small mistake when Buzz and Neil had pulled their life support system. This small mistake could have prevented them from returning to Earth and could have trapped them forever. This switch was essential to the spacecraft's movement. The two astronauts immediately informed NASA about this. The special thing was that the two did not panic at that time. Aldrin, who soon became an engineer, somehow managed to connect this switch and make the spacecraft work. They were then able to launch the spacecraft, dock with the mothership, and launch it. But the challenge of returning safely to Earth did not end there. After a journey of 195 hours, 18 minutes, and 35 seconds, Apollo 11 splashed down in the Pacific Ocean. The USS Hornet, a lifeboat, was ready to report the landing and rescue them. But due to bad weather, the spacecraft landed 13 kilometers away from the ship. This small difference could have caused great destruction, but fortunately, no one was harmed. 8. The astronauts who went to the moon had to be quarantined for a long time. Although they went to the moon and returned safely to Earth, the astronauts could not experience that joy all at once. They had to quarantine for a long time before returning to their homes and reuniting with their families. Although many people knew that there was no way life could survive on the moon, NASA did not want to take any risks. Therefore, after this historic moonwalk, all 3 astronauts, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins, were quarantined for 21 days. This measure was taken to completely stop the spread of bacteria, viruses, or other dangerous things that could have gone wrong on the moon. Neil celebrated his birthday that year, and during the 21 days of quarantine, these astronauts and the soil and rocks they brought back from the moon were carefully tested. Only after that did the astronauts get to go home. Fortunately, no harmful germs or other harmful things appeared to have come to Earth from the moon, but NASA was hesitant to continue taking this risk, so they may have been reluctant to continue the lunar landing. The moon landing is one of the most memorable events in human history. Although the moon landing has not yet occurred, this feat in 1969 allowed us to confirm many of the things we had speculated about the moon.